Hello and welcome to TSK F1. My name's Rich and this is your daily dose of F1 news. Today we're going to be talking about how Lando Norris thinks Oscar Piastri is better than Lando Norris? Lando Norris is going to be talking about how he thinks Piastri is better than Daniel Ricciardo, and also Vasseur says something about a mild penalty for Red Bull. Basically he's talking about the cost cap and that it was mild. And also Aston Martin. There's some interesting comments from Fernando Alonso talking about Aston Martin and how long they may enjoy their pace. So without further ado, please do make sure you're hitting that like button and also subscribing down below, guys. So to start off, we're going to talk about Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris and what has been said here, because Lando Norris has made some comments which I don't know, I found interesting really, because he was asked directly how he thought Oscar Piastri was doing, and he said honestly he's doing really well. It's to the Dutch source of Formula One. He handles pressure very well, and I think that's one of his strengths. He's calm, controlled, and quick, so he's got a lot of what you need. He pushes me more compared to the competition I've had in recent years, which is also a good thing for us as a team. I find that a really interesting comment, that he feels that Oscar Piastri is pushing him more than Danny Rick did. And is this part of what Daniel Ricciardo has gone to try and find of himself? It's not even sly. It's not even sly, is it? And really, everything on the surface, they get on well and things like that. Is that just Lando Norris simply saying what it says there, nothing between the lines, that Piastri is simply pushing him more? I know people won't be too happy about that, but I was saying it last season for quite some time. But or is this, which do you think it is? I suppose you can take it on face value and say that is Norris literally just saying that Piastri is pushing him more. Is it a dig at Daniel Ricciardo? Is it him bigging up Piastri because he's his new teammate? Or is it just him, is it him playing the PR game? I'm not entirely sure. But I don't think Lando Norris would go out of his way to compliment a teammate, because we've seen before where I didn't think this was a bad thing. He got savaged on social media for it, but we saw when Lando Norris said he had no sympathy for Daniel Ricciardo. I'm sure that was the situation. And I was about to say everyone took it out of context, but the context is exactly that. I don't think it's a bad thing for a racing driver to say. While they are obviously working together for the betterment of the team, why would one driver have sympathy for another underperforming when it's his job to beat him? Like, that is the very essence of why Lando Norris is there. He's got to beat his teammate. That is literally it, isn't it? So when he said he had no sympathy for him, I don't think it was a thinly veiled anything, and I don't think he was being particularly cutting. I don't think it was horrible. I think it was just honest, wasn't it? And I think this might be along the same lines. I don't think he's particularly intending to offend Daniel Ricciardo or annoy people or say something out of turn. I just feel like he's been asked a question and he's answered it. But we did see, and I picked up on these quotes, that Christian Horner said that Daniel Ricciardo had picked up some bad habits at McLaren and that Red Bull have had to feed him up. And he said it was clear he came back, when he came back, that he picked up some bad habits. We didn't recognise him as the Daniel that had left us 2 or 3 years earlier. And Daniel Ricciardo has said, it's only been a few months, but I already know what I want to do differently when I get back on the grid next year. That's cool, because I wouldn't know if I was sitting in the car again this year. And he says, I know where I want to be and that I thrive when the stakes are high in a top team, he said. I know it will probably be difficult to achieve that, but that's my goal. Now, it's It's a curious one, really, isn't it? Because doesn't that make Daniel Ricciardo a less attractive proposition for a lot of teams? Wouldn't you think? He says he knows where he wants to be and that he thrives when the stakes are higher in a top team. Now, unless he's been given assurances about the Red Bull second seat, which I honestly don't know, maybe he has. I could see that happening. In that statement, he's basically saying, if a car cannot win, I'm not interested because I can't thrive in that situation. And that's not a good thing. Like, if with Mercedes taking sort of a step back compared to where they've been, you'd expect Lewis Hamilton to step up. If something happened with Red Bull and they took a step back, you'd expect Max Verstappen to step up. At Ferrari, you would be expecting Carlos Sainz and Leclerc to be working really hard to push the team forward. But I think he's trying to be positive and stuff, but to me, it's basically saying, if I join a team that isn't fighting for wins, I can't be arsed. Honestly, I'm not sure I'm on board. I've got no issue with Daniel Ricciardo. I just feel like it's a bit of a... Without assurances on a seat for next season, which we don't know about, he may well have, it just seems a little bit of a silly thing to say for me. I get the positivity angle of it, and he's saying that he wants to be fighting for wins, but at the same time, you're also saying to, 80%, 75% of the grid, 70% of the grid, there's no way you're going to drive for them. You know what I mean? Everyone's out of the picture unless you're a Red Bull, a Mercedes, or a Ferrari, maybe an Aston. And that isn't happening right now either. So, I don't know. It's making me think more and more that he's got a... I think unless he's got assurances, it's a bit silly, but it makes me think more that he has assurances for next season. Please do remember to hit that like on the stream, guys. It really, really helps. So, the next one, I'm going to have to read this as I report it to you guys, because it was a headline that I noticed, and it is a short article, but it's all quotes. It's and it's on who's the quotes to? I'm not even sure, but it's on Grand Prix News, and He said it says the Ferrari boss said the dominant title-winning and title-leading team losing 10% of its wind tunnel time on top of its $7 million fine was not a penalty. Vasseur continues, and these are direct quotes, and I haven't read them, so we'll hear them and we will digest them at the same time. I don't want to say they didn't do a good job, because I honestly think they did a very good job on the car, and I'm not trying to find an excuse at all. It's not that. But if you ask me if the penalty was too light, I say yes. I think it was not a penalty. It was very low. If you consider that, basically, we will improve a little less than a second during the season in terms of aerodynamics, and you get a penalty of 10% of this, it's a tenth. And since it's not a non-linear progression, it's probably even less than that, and you can spend this money elsewhere. For me, the penalty was marginal. And if you consider that you have an advantage at the start of the season because you spent more the year before, I don't want to say they didn't do a good job, because I honestly think they did a very good job on the car. And this is exactly what I've been saying. Look, right, you only need to cheat once. Now, whether they did it knowingly or whether they didn't do it knowingly, in Formula One, for example, dare I say, moving into 2026, a team only needs to overspend once and get it right, don't they? So if a team overspends in 2025 on their 2026 car, that's the regulations locked in for X amount of years. And look, I know I'm being really, really cynical about it, but Vasseur's just said what I've been saying for a while now. that basically, if you overspend at the beginning of the regulations and you get it right and everything's locked in, then it has, like, the penalty that they received, well, he's just said it was very low, it was marginal, and he doesn't think it was a penalty. And they're not my words, they're Fred Vasseur's. And the thing about Fred Vasseur is, I think if you watch Formula One, you can see he's very, very straight talking. Very straight talking. And honestly, that just lines up with exactly what I've been thinking for some time now. That if you get the concept right and you've overspent and you've got that concept in part by overspending, I don't care what the actual amount of overspend was. An overspend is an overspend. Maybe that's the difference for another team to have been able to manage it. Maybe it was extra CFD. Maybe it was extra wind tunnel. Maybe it was extra prototypes that they could test. And it's basically Vasseur. I don't know. I can't be the only one. Well, I'm not the only one thinking it. The Ferrari team boss is thinking the same as me. Do any of you think the same? Does what I'm saying make sense even? Sorry, very dry this morning. Needed a bit of coffee. But yeah, he's basically... I'm somewhat surprised because he's not pulling any punches there. He's still sort of being careful and saying they've done a very good job on the car. But in about 3 paragraphs, he says, very mild, too light, was not a penalty. And it was very low. So there we go. That's what Fred Vasseur had to say. We'll move on. There's not much input on that one, so we'll move on. And really, it's to the main story of the day, which isn't controversial particularly. It's just spelling some things out, really. And it's Fernando Alonso talking about how the season works and upgrades for the cars, because even me doing this content, I can see that people have got a very skewed reality of what's possible with upgrades and how quickly teams can make upgrades. I've seen it in this very chat where for some reason people think that a team can see data and then have like a new front wing 2 weeks later at another Grand Prix, and it just doesn't work that way. But Alonso has got some quotes about this, which I find quite interesting, where he says, it seems that qualifying is quite important now because race pace is very, very similar. And I think now we enter into a part of the season that is going to be very interesting. Which team is developing the car faster? And we've kind of spoken about this when Mercedes fans have asked me about what I think the time frame of their upgrades will be. And I've sort of given my thoughts on that. And he says, I think the first 3 races being away from Europe, it's difficult to bring upgrades and things like that. But from now on, maybe we see the level of the teams changing a little bit race by race, depending on who brings up an upgrade that's good enough. Pardon me. And he said that 3 consecutive podiums was something he never expected. And he said it's all happy days at Aston Martin at the moment. We never expected to be on the podium, maybe even throughout the season. And in 3 races, we have 3. So everything that comes now is a plus. We take every opportunity and we need to learn. We need to grow as a team and also maybe now off track because we're racing against Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, teams that are used to this kind of pace of development and things like that. Maybe we're just in a learning process. So we take this 2023 in a very humble manner and let's see how it's going. And honestly, that's a really... would you expect it? It's a really mature sort of approach there that Alonso's basically saying that Aston Martin didn't expect what's happened in the first races. So maybe Aston Martin just need to take that with like humbly and continue on with their season and their plan internally and continue with that and go forward. And maybe they're a lot quicker than they expected. And it also, to me, instead of sort of what Mercedes was saying maybe a month or so ago in saying that they were seeing big gains in the wind tunnel. This seems to me, and I am an Alonso fan, for those of you that might be new to the channel, this seems to me that this is Alonso's way of saying, in a very political way, don't be surprised if we drop back here, because Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, they'll be developing at a pace Aston Martin aren't used to, and will Aston Martin be able to keep up there? And I think even with that last passage there, where he says maybe we are just in a learning process, so we take this 2023 in a very humble manner, and let's see how it's going. Maybe this is him saying that Aston Martin almost shouldn't try and keep up with the Mercedes and Ferraris and things like that. Because it would make sense on the one hand, wouldn't it? Because if they overexert and put too much into the 2023 car, there is a danger that the 2024 car suffers because of it, right? So maybe this is his political way of saying, this is awesome, this is more than we expected, let's do what we can, but let's appreciate where we are and try and move on, sort of thing. And that's the kind of vibe I get from it. I'd love to see your opinions on it. Ian's saying, I hope Aston stay up there, but we will see what happens. We'll do a little poll. I don't know how many people are going to vote on it. It's very quiet this morning. That's not what I wanted to do. I clicked the wrong button completely. Will Aston stay competitive all season? Yes, no. Don't mind the caps there, guys. I was quick. Be interesting to know what you guys think. Will Aston Martin remain competitive all season? And I don't mean particularly race wins. I just mean, knocking on the door of podiums and things like that. Give me what your thoughts are on that. For what it's worth, I think that it's going to be different throughout the season. I think we might see... I don't think we'll see a stall in development. I think they've got an inherently good car, and I think if they stick to their plan of upgrades, that you will... I think there's going to be a race... Red Bull get it wrong that allows Alonso to win throughout this season. I think there's going to be a spot where, I think I don't know, maybe Max with some reliability, or maybe something crazy happens with weather, and or maybe a safety car and Red Bull get the call wrong. I think Alonso's in that area where he's there to pick up the pieces, and I think a lot would agree with that. Will he win a race on outright pace? I don't think so. I don't think he can. I don't think any car is anywhere near that Red Bull car at the minute. I mean, look, I was speaking about it this weekend with my dad, actually, and he was talking to me about the famous Mansell Senna wheel-to-wheel moment, and I'm sure many of you have seen that, right, where it was basically down to who had the biggest man plums for that situation, and they were wheel to wheel and basically bumping all the way down the straight, right? And if you compare that, and this isn't, I don't mean this as a dig, but if you compare it, which that was just battling real racing, if you compare that to the Red Bulls with DRS open just driving past everyone, we're watching a different sport where we're trying to convince ourselves there's a race going on. You know what I mean? And I really thought that, I really let that dwell on me a bit this weekend, where I was thinking, you know what? It's mad how much this sport has changed, where it really did. You had those wheel to wheel, they had to give it everything. And now it really is. I mean, DRS, it's less and less effective the more down the field you go. But if you look at the fast cars, when they open the DRS, it's like the defending car is stood still. You know, it's a bit crazy, isn't it? How, I don't know. it just saddened me a little bit. Yeah. Because everyone was on about the passes that Perez was making into turn 9 and 10 in Australia, but the reality was he was just opening up his DRS. He was passed by the corner. And to me, I don't know what I'm celebrating there. There isn't an amount of skill that makes him press the DRS button harder or the throttle harder. He's just overtaken someone on a straight because the car's quicker, you know. And look, this isn't a particular dig against Red Bull. I'm just kind of digressing here about different cars and eras within Formula One, and we've lost a big part of it because when we're talking about racing these days, it's just a different sport, isn't it? It is just a different sport because there was some passes. I think Ocon did a pass into turn 9, which actually he was on the outside, and that was ballsy, but I can't overly praise someone opening the DRS and just driving in a straight line past someone, like whoever it is. Alonso, I can't praise it. It's you're just going in a, But anyway, I've digressed big time away from what I was talking about. Can the Aston Martin pace last? I think it can, and I think he'll accidentally I think he'll find himself in a victorious position at some point this season. Not for a title charge. I just think at some point reliability or something is going to let Red Bull down. Who knows? Who knows what it will be? But I think that Alonso will be there to pick up the pieces. But the issue really is both Red Bulls pretty much need to have a failure for that to happen. Because if Perez is in second, again, the car is very, very quick. So it's hard to do. Maybe indeed, Reese. Maybe indeed. Or maybe, who knows? Or maybe Red Bulls have a double crash like Turkey back in the day. Who knows? But there we are, really. It is difficult to bring you guys the news at the minute because, we've got this huge gap between races, and there isn't a great deal for me to report on, but I am trying. The poll said 100% yes, Aston Martin will stay competitive all season. That's very interesting to see. Now, I will be back at 9 o'clock in the morning with all the latest news that I will bring you, and I will be live tomorrow. No, sorry, I'm going to be live over on Twitch very shortly on my Pit Lanes channel, and I'm also going to be live on Kick later on today as well. So if you're into your gaming and stuff, please do come along and join me. I'm going to be driving some pretend race cars, so come and join me there. All right, guys, thank you very much, and if you're not coming over to Twitch, I'll see you in the morning. Cheers. Bye.